What is it about Over the Garden Wall that gives me this nostalgic, warm, happy feeling every time I watch it? Is it the whimsical nature of the art style and characters? Is it the beautiful music that accompanies the story? Or is it the fact that this kid's cartoon explores some unexpectedly deep and dark concepts? Today I'm here to explore the magic of Over the Garden Wall, what sets it apart from other animated shows, and its ability to simultaneously make the audience comforted and uncomfortable, amused and pensive, entertained in the moment and thinking about the show much later after watching. The week or two leading up to the release of Over the Garden Wall, Cartoon Network was littered with advertisements for it. Commercials at the end of every show, and there was a little banner in the corner of the screen constantly. Cartoon Network's attempt to build hype for this show was very successful for me. I was so excited to catch it when it aired, and it did not disappoint. I remember I thought for some reason it was airing the week before it actually did, tuning in and being disappointed by a different show playing. Probably Uncle Grandpa. I hated that show. Now, almost 10 years later, I binge watch the show a few times a year. Other shows I was obsessed with in this era, like The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack or Adventure Time, don't hold up as well to the caliber of Over the Garden Wall for me. I still love them, but those other animated shows I mentioned were very much victims of the time period when the so random, funny comedy style was very popular. Over the Garden Wall is able to have comedic moments and seemingly random occurrences, but they're so beautifully framed in this whimsical, dark universe that they don't fall prey to being so easily branded as of the 2016 era of comedy and cartoons. You can tell Over the Garden Wall was still trying to figure out its style and get its roots when you watch the pilot, The Tome of the Unknown. There are many more so random moments in there, but once the actual series starts, any moments like this are much better blended into the ambiance and it feels much less in your face and more naturally comedic. Honestly, I remember so clearly when the first episode came on, and at the end I was so disappointed it was over. Later, when it was added to streaming services, it's currently on Hulu, I was able to binge it all in one 120-minute session. Once I consumed it in this way, I realized that this is how it was meant to be consumed. The episodes play like chapters of a book. The entire watch through is about the same length as a movie, and it's easily binged in one setting. It's so fun to watch the chapters of the story unfold in this way. Since my initial introduction to the series, I've rewatched the show many times and listened to the soundtrack even more often. I draw these characters in the margins of notebooks, and they've become beloved to me. Oh, potatoes and molasses. The music. The music in this show is such a work of art. The soundtrack is beautiful, haunting, silly, and thought-provoking. The soundtrack that accompanies this story is so different from soundtracks of other cartoon shows. Typically in cartoon shows, the music that we hear is minimal and meant to be non-obstructive. If you think about the music that's in between scenes or in the background of SpongeBob episodes, for example, it's very much ever present, but it's always similar and easy to tune out. Occasionally, in other cartoon shows, the characters will put on a musical number, like the Fun song in SpongeBob or the Daddy Why Did You Eat My Fries song in Adventure Time. Other cartoons do this as well, but rarely in cartoons is music such a centerpiece of the show. Apart from the theme song, typically music is not as important. In Over the Garden Wall, music is ever present and ever changing. Genres change constantly in the series, to include folk, bluegrass, opera, and classical. The songs are performed not only in unique and changing styles, but also with real instruments, and they use instruments that are not typically heard in cartoons, like the cello, the classical piano, and the bassoon. The lyrics of the songs are also storytelling mechanisms. They help to feed the story along and allow you to gain insights into the characters. Without Langtry's lament, the audience could have never understood how forlorn the school teacher was about losing her love. Understanding her emotions helped to boost the sense of joy that follows when her lost love returns. Some other lyrics later in the songs are in reference to much darker themes like death. Patient is the Night is on the surface about the beauty of nighttime and how it always comes at the end of each day, but could obviously be a metaphor for death. The Old Black Train song could also be seen as a reference to death. In the lyrics it says, "You don't need no ticket, boys, it'll take you when it's time." And later, "How'd you find this depot? 'Cause it ain't where you belong. You will pass a graveyard stone, worn by years. The train'll stop a minute, but don't let it leave you here." If these lyrics are to be taken at face value, I think we no longer need to speculate if the unknown is a space between life and death. This song confirms it. The first song we hear in Over the Garden Wall is played by Greg's frog, Jason Funderburger. Later, we find out that it's also sung by the frog. When the frog serenades his fellow froggy folk on the boat, we're able to see his voice has been with us all along. This realization that the frog was sentient and intelligent led me to wonder, what is it like when they go back to the real world at the end and have the frog with them? Can he still think for himself? I'd like to think he can, and I'd like to think he's still wearing a pair of socks. At the end of Adelaide's House reprise, we hear Wirt crack up with laughter, which is the first time in this series we hear him genuinely express his emotions without reservation or embarrassment. The unabashed joy is such a relief to hear after his reserved nature in the show previously. There are songs on the soundtrack that are not my favorite. I'm not a big fan of the Highwayman or the Cloud City songs, but they serve important purposes. They are an important way to show that the realm that Greg and Wirt find themselves in is nonsensical, and the people they encounter in the unknown are not capable of understanding them and helping them to get home, because that journey they must complete for themselves. Everyone's favorite song in this series is Potatoes and Molasses. When we hear this song, it's a silly, whimsical, fun interaction between Greg and the animals in the schoolhouse. In this moment, when watching the scene, it doesn't feel like anything more than just a fun, silly song. If you dive a little deeper into Potatoes and Molasses, beyond the silly first impression that it gives you, one could argue that the song is a metaphor for seeing things as they truly are, appreciating the simplicity of small pleasures and learning to give them the attention they deserve. Another interpretation of this song could be the willingness of Greg throughout the show to try to solve problems. He never gives up, and he always comes up with a solution, even if it's one that no one else would have thought of. When faced with a plate of boring potatoes, no one else in the room would have thought to add molasses to give it a different flavor, but he sees the world through different eyes. He sees the world through the eyes of a child. Children have the ability to think of simple solutions to complex problems. Later, in one of the deepest moments of the show, at the pinnacle of conflict and drama, we hear the Potatoes and Molasses reprise, Potatoes et Molasses, and this song is given a much darker and more serious tone to match the scene that it's the soundtrack to. This moment happens to be right before Wirt has his childlike realization and saves Greg, further confirming my theory that it symbolizes the innocence of childhood and children coming up with simple solutions to complex problems. Whether listening to the music as it was intended along with the show scene by scene, or enjoying it separately as its own soundtrack and imagining the scenes that accompany it in your mind, this soundtrack is truly very unique and different from any other cartoon accompaniment. One of my favorite songs on the soundtrack is one you wouldn't expect, because it's only 29 seconds long, but I could easily listen to a 10-hour loop of it. This song plays during the episode The Ringing of the Bell, when Wirt and Lorna are having a sweet romantic moment. The song is titled Like Ships. Many times in the series, we are shown a small snippet of a song, like The Old Black Train or Patient is the Night. Both are powerful, but as part of the miniseries format, the episodes are so short that the songs have to make a big impact in a small amount of time. If we take a look at the lyrics for the opening song of the show, Into the Unknown, we can see many themes that play out later in the show through the metaphors in the lyrics. Led through the mist by the milk light of moon, all that is lost is revealed. Our long bygone burdens, mere echoes of the spring. But where have we come, and where shall we end? If dreams can't come true, then why not pretend? How the gentle wind beckons through the leaves as autumn colors fall, dancing in a swirl of golden memories, the loveliest lies of all. My interpretation of the lyrics is that the time spent in their hometown before traveling into the unknown, they are in a metaphorical spring. Their burdens that have seemed huge have bygone, and that they now reside in the autumn and have the power of hindsight. This is obvious by the fact that when they wake back up in their hometown, they view their problems through a different lens. And after going through what felt like a long journey, they have a new perspective on them. In the autumn, they are able to see what truly matters. Pottsfield Town, the art style. The art style in this show is so unique and continues to inspire artists to this day. The first thing that pops into my mind when I think about the art style is the scene in Pottsfield. The scene with skeletons who have donned their gourds, are wearing pumpkins on their heads, and dancing around in a joyful manner. It gives you such a creepy feeling. Then the leader of Pottsfield is revealed to be a black cat. It's so spooky, creepy, and cute all at the same time, and adds to the Halloween themes. The creator of this series said in an interview, living in LA for 8 years without much of a fall season made him long for a typical autumn season like he had experienced growing up. He also said in the same interview that other elements of the show were inspired by many hours spent daydreaming. I, like many others, cherish and adore the Halloween season. It's the best time of year. The fall aesthetic with changing leaves, dying grass, everything is orange and brown and pumpkin. The fall Halloween themes and aesthetics have made this miniseries a Halloween staple for many people, and they rewatch it every fall. Not only does this show take place during Halloween, you find out later that the characters are dressed in Halloween costumes the entire time. There are also many spooky themes like black cats, skeletons, pumpkins, witches, monsters, and candy. All of these things together make it a perfect watch during the Halloween season. The creator says when developing the art style for the show, he took inspiration from many vintage artworks, including an old children's book called The Complete Optimist, vintage postcards, and chromolithography, specifically Halloween themed. When looking at these individual influences, you can see clearly where the inspiration was taken. Also, you can see the unique voice that was developed for the show. Another unique characteristic of the show is the lack of template for what the characters should be and look like in the unknown. All characters have such differences. Even the human characters all look very different from one another. There seems to be no template for what a character should be. They may be an animal, a monster, or a human, and once the show gets going, you never question the variety, as it helps to lend to the dreamlike atmosphere. I think that the art style is meant to elicit the feeling of having a dream, because in dreams there are things like this that make no sense during the course of your dream. They seem to make perfect sense while you're dreaming them. It's not until you're awake that you can think back on the dream and recall, hey, that was weird, didn't make much sense. This is seen through countless examples in the show. To name a few would be the frog people on the boat, Greg's pet frog bursting into song, Beatrice and her bird family who used to be people, the monster or demon that inhabits the sweet girl Lorna, or even the beast and the woodsman. None of these characters have anything physically in common. They're all significantly different from one another, and they have very different appearances, but seemingly they go together and fit in this universe of the unknown. However, once Greg and Wirt are back in their hometown, everyone looks to be the same, as if they've woken up from a dream. Another thing that's so brilliant about the art style is the two protagonists of the story, Wirt and Greg, are in nonsensical costumes throughout the entire show, and you assume this is just how they look. At the end of the show, we find out that these aren't just silly outfits from the unknown, but they're Halloween costumes from their hometown. To discover that the teapot on Greg's head has been his elephant costume the entire time is so hilarious and cute. It's so wonderful in many ways that there are the most whimsical, nonsensical things going on in the art and the animation, but the story never acknowledges them, and Halloween costumes are a perfect example of this. The story eventually acknowledges them in the last episode, but you have to see these characters in the crazy costumes the entire show, and you have no idea why they're dressed like that. An interesting theme throughout the show is the powerful symbolism used in the meaning of objects, such as the lantern and the scissors. The objects are simple but impactful, and the images stick with you clearly. The irony of the scissors being used to clip the wings of the bird so they can be free and human again is strange, because if a bird's wings are clipped, usually it removes their ability to fly, and in the wild they could not survive. The same can be said for the lantern. You would assume to be safe that the lantern should stay lit, but in this story, to be safe and ultimately set free, the lantern must be put out. I wonder if this was done intentionally to subvert expectations of the objects. I've seen many people have tattoos of the lantern or the scissors from the show to symbolize their love for it, which is a sign that the symbols were powerful images and they stuck with people long after watching the show. The backgrounds in the show are much more complicated than typically in animated shows. The creator has also said in interviews that this made production of the show much more complicated and the animation process longer. The backgrounds are so important though. They set the stage for each episode and they help to drive the story through the scenery, which is an important mechanism in the short episodes. The themes for each episode are so starkly different. It seems as if each episode is meant to teach a new lesson, and the scenery and backgrounds are companions to each one. A good example of this is the stark difference between the tone and mood of the schoolhouse, the Mad Love Mansion, and the Unknown Woods. These themes and lessons are oftentimes deep and meaningful, far beyond what you would expect from a Halloween kids show on Cartoon Network. All that is lost is revealed, the deep and meaningful themes. Something else that is so unique and special about the show is that it explores very deep subjects, and it happens in a way that the show remains appropriate for children, but it's also very deep on an adult level. The creator of the show is tight-lipped when discussing the themes and leaves the interpretation up to the audience, so here are my thoughts on them. It explores deep themes that hit home for many people, including the struggles of being in a complicated family system. The relationship between Greg and Wirt is special and a focal point of the series. Initially, they appear to have a very typical older and younger sibling relationship. Wirt is constantly annoyed by the efforts of Greg, despite Greg trying his best to help and do what he can to make his big brother happy. It isn't until later that you realize their dynamic is far more complicated and that they are members of a blended family. Greg's dad is Wirt's stepfather. This layers on levels of resentment and feelings of discomfort within a complicated family system. This sheds a new light on Wirt's constant annoyance for Greg and his impatience with his silly antics. He resents him for being a symbol of a family that he doesn't want to be a part of. Children who come from divorced parents often fondly recall their whole family unit, and they wish that their parents could get back together, leading to a subconscious resentment of their new family unit, no matter how harmonious it is. The sacrifices that the brothers take for each other help to repair and strengthen their bond throughout the series. Seeing Greg try to help Wirt by delivering his secret mixtape with poetry and clarinet solos to his crush, or seeing him agree to take on the beast, doing whatever he commands. And finally, seeing Greg turn down the opportunity to go home on his own in Cloud City, because saving his brother is just as important as his own life. Even more meaningful, seeing the sacrifices that Wirt makes for Greg, taking on the challenges, braving the blizzard, going out against the advice of Beatrice's family to find and save his brother after realizing how much Greg has done for him. This theme in the show would only be picked up by an adult watching it, and it would likely go over a child's head, but knowing this helps to feel a sense of joy, and it makes the finale even more wholesome when they come to realize how much they do care for each other and how much they're willing to sacrifice. It makes me feel like they will have a much deeper connection and friendship going forward as brothers. Another theme is the struggle of adolescence. Becoming comfortable in your own skin, accepting a blended family and the complications that come along with that. Learning who you are and who you want to be is so difficult in adolescence, and the struggle is evident throughout the series with Wirt. This can be seen at the end of the show when we get a glimpse of his bedroom and see his many varied interests. He's still trying to figure out exactly who he is. During adolescence, it's so difficult to think for yourself. Many kids in this phase of life fall into group thinking and are easily influenced by their peers. When in their hometown, Wirt is crippled by worry about what others think of him. Many times in the show, the characters that are not thinking for themselves are punished, like the woodsman and Beatrice in the beginning. The characters that think for themselves or go their own way are rewarded and eventually liberated, like Greg Wirt and Beatrice and the woodsman at the end. Another theme throughout is children who feel like they have these immense challenges and difficulties in their everyday lives being confronted with an actually life-threatening event, putting their huge problems into perspective. For example, we're shown in the opening of the show the scene of Beatrice sitting with her dog, looking angry and throwing a stone at a bluebird. Undoubtedly, she's just had a disagreement with her mother. Wirt, overcome with stress and anxiety about confessing his feelings to the girl he likes. But when Beatrice and Wirt are confronted with mortality and peril in the unknown, they're forced to place their small problems into perspective and realize that things that they thought were earth-shattering before are small in comparison to being faced with something as terrifying as Adelaide or the Beast. In Over the Garden Wall, the woodsman has these things to say about the Beast. The Beast is the loss of hope. Fall ill or lose hope, and your life will pass into his crooked hands. These quotes give insight into the symbology of the Beast himself and give us a clue as to what the Beast could be a metaphor for. Many have theorized that the Beast is the symbol for death, but I think that's too easy and too shallow of an interpretation. I think that the Beast symbolizes not only the influence that others can have on you, but the influence you can have on yourself. The negative thoughts within, or the devil on your shoulder. These insidious thoughts can spiral into negative feelings and actions. Thoughts like, I'm not good enough, no one cares about me, or I will never achieve my goals. Untrue thoughts. In life, sometimes we have a dark inner voice that feeds us thoughts that are not true about ourselves or about the situation we find ourselves in, and it gives us feelings of pessimism and anxiety in situations that don't always call for it. I've personally done a lot of work on controlling my own thoughts and feelings, as sometimes thoughts, like the Beast, can creep out of the darkness and take over your whole mindset without your knowledge or permission. Thoughts become feelings, and feelings become actions. At the root of everything we do are thoughts. I think the Beast symbolizes the negative thoughts and the ability they have to insidiously creep in and take over our lives. I recently heard that thoughts are like the ocean's waves. You can't control the waves of the ocean, but you can choose which ones are worthy to surf. Meaning you can't control the thoughts that pop into your mind, but you can control which ones to dwell on. A lesson that I have learned and that has become really powerful for me is the ability to stop negative thoughts before they spiral into bad feelings. The ability to recognize thoughts for what they are and choose to consciously think about something else if the negative thoughts are causing me harm. I think this is exactly what happened at the end of the journey in the unknown with Wirt. He, for a moment, is ready to take on the lifelong role of lantern bearer, sacrificing himself to save his brother's life. Then he suddenly snaps out of it and says, "Wait, that's dumb. I'm not gonna just wander through the woods for the rest of my life." This is exactly what it feels like to snap out of a dark thought. Going back to the quotes from the woodsman, the Beast is the loss of hope. Lose hope, and your life will pass into his crooked hands. If you fall victim to your dark thoughts, you can get lost within them, but you can fight against them just like they fought against the Beast. The finale gives us a montage with happy endings of all the characters we've been introduced to in the unknown. This leads me to wonder if they're also lost souls that are trying to find their way back, or is the unknown their home forever? Even if they're not part of the real world in the show, it's a relief to see that their lives in the unknown will continue to be happy and flourishing, no longer in peril. It's also a beautiful message that Wirt, by finding himself, becoming more confident, standing up for himself and his loved ones against evil, he unintentionally helps so many other people just by leading by example. This shows that our actions have consequences, and that if we believe in ourselves and do the right thing, we can inspire others to change their lives for the better. Well, there you have it. All the reasons that I believe make Over the Garden Wall magical. Truly, this mini-series is like lightning in a bottle. I don't think that anyone could ever capture the unique feeling that comes along with this series, but I've tried to express why I think it's so special. If you've enjoyed this video, please share it with someone who, like you, loves Over the Garden Wall. If you made it this far, I really appreciate your time, and I hope you do something today that makes you happy. See you later. Bye!